Everyone. Could I ask anyone over there in the back, anyone interested in this session on what Indonesia plans to do for the ASEAN Chairmanship, to come forward and please sit down? We're about to move things along. So please just come forward and take a seat if you're intending to follow the session. Thank you, thank you. Okay, I think we can get the ball rolling. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alessandro. I'm chairman of Kearney in Indonesia. And we will facilitate with Shirley, who's CEO of Kearney in Indonesia. We will facilitate this discussion around Indonesia's chairmanship for ASEAN and what is the program. And we have an exciting list of folks that will join us in this discussion. And including Padino as alternative chair for ASEAN BAC, including Vice Minister of Trade, Jerry, including former Minister of Finance, Chati Basri, and Chairman of Mandiri, including Kadin representatives for ASEAN region, Asia region, Pahans, and Raju, as well as for the multilateral. So I would start by calling Padino onto stage to give us a briefing about the strategic vision of ASEAN BAC for this chairmanship year on behalf of Pak Arshad, Chairman of Kadin. Padino, ini nggak bisa, lu pegang aja ya.
Thank you, Alex. And good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just take this time to acknowledge a few distinguished guests. I'd like to acknowledge Pa Febrian A. Rudyard, who is the permanent representative to Indonesia, to the United Nations in Geneva. Also, Pa Jerry Sambuaga, our Vice Minister of Trade, Republic of Indonesia. Of course, Pa Chati Basri, former Minister of Finance, and also Chairman of Bank Mandiri, and other distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just try and welcome you today in this session, which will focus on the ASEAN Centrality and the global economy and markets. But before I begin, let me also express deep regrets on behalf of our chairman, Arshad Rashid, for not being able to attend today, as he had to attend some urgent and personal matters in Indonesia. And so, along with our chairman, allow me to sort of share with you what our vision for the ASEAN Business Advisory Council, which will be chaired by Indonesia this year, and what are the major themes we'll be showcasing this year. But in closing, our G20, B20 presidency last year, I want to thank, first of all, everyone that's involved, that helped support the G20 as well, especially the B20. And today I'd like to just bring our attention to our next endeavor, which is the chairmanship of ASEAN, advancing ASEAN centrality and influence throughout the world. Today, ASEAN is no longer seen as a regional power that only sits on the sidelines of global economic development. Today, ASEAN instead is seen as a multilateral grouping that is regarded as the future of production and consumption, or as our government has called it, the epicenter of growth. And on behalf of our chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce and this year's chair for ASEAN Business Advisory Council, Pa Arshad Rashid, allow me to share some of our thoughts on how ASEAN should act as the epicenter for growth from the perspective of a businessman. So being the epicenter of growth is not exclusive to geography. We know that, right? It is true to say that ASEAN is placed in a very strategic area at the heart of the Indo-Pacific region, and thus is highly contested. And we must look beyond some issues, and we must look beyond what the geographical boundaries. ASEAN must be the key driver of net zero economy, a champion in the southern part of our globe. This is also quite apparent at the B20. With its reorganized and low-risk value chain, ASEAN should also stand as a solution of global energy and food insecurity. And also, the young and vibrant demographics is an advantage for ASEAN countries to emerge as a venue for global tech-based innovations. And the list, of course, goes on. We often hear with a pessimistic tone that does ASEAN centrality really matter for the world? What is its relevance? Well, we know that ASEAN economic development has always showed a positive trajectory with growing GDP in nominal terms every year. And now it has become the 5th largest economy in the world, and thus investment is not an opportunity not to be missed. ASEAN is the 4th largest exporting region in the world. Thus, regional economic shocks will impact the global trade regime. And for your investments, it will have a direct impact on global supply chain resilience. But despite being the center of Indo-Pacific strategic contests, ASEAN is not a party to tensions between the US and China, for example, and it does not take sides. Instead, we consistently maintain a neutral posture to promote dialogue as a means of resolving conflicts. The consolidated determination of ASEAN countries to transition their energy systems will substantially support global climate targets. So with these facts, ASEAN is on its way to becoming a more consequential economic power and therefore matters to the world. It matters to the global growth, it matters to regional prosperity, and it matters to the people of ASEAN. I don't think these are ambitious goals. Both the chairman and I feel this way, and we are on the right path. We just need to strengthen our efforts and keep reviewing this progress, which is actually an ongoing progress. So Indonesia, we believe, is in the right track to lead the ASEAN centrality in global markets, because Indonesia, with a population of 280 million, is the largest market and economy in the Southeast Asian region, and it plans to be the 4th largest economy in the world by 2045. And along with Malaysia, Thailand, Vietnam, and the Philippines, we account for 85% of regional growth. 85%. In recent years, we've also made it great and exemplary structural reforms, like the Undang-Undang Cipta Kerja in Indonesia, that embraces partnerships and have rejuvenated our economy with a global outlook. So encouraging greater collaboration and among economic actors with regards to the grand total of mutually beneficial growth is basically what our objectives are. Ladies and gentlemen, BlackRock Economic Outlook in 2023 reported that the era of great moderation is not coming back anytime soon. And I think if you look at some of the atmosphere in Davos, it really reflects that. In fact, in a year of volatility, it is in sight for developed markets. The Indonesian chairmanship recognizes its trend as intensified geopolitical turmoil, recorded high inflation, as well as concerns of a looming global recession taking effect in major economies, not to mention the undeniable challenge of climate change, which is perhaps the most pressing issue of all. But in addition to global challenges, internal challenges also exist. We also see member countries in ASEAN often focus on their own internal affairs, a little too much rather than empowering the value of ASEAN as a whole. The rise of protectionism is a real threat and that we all must address. So disparity is also a threat that can hamper growth and integration. Singaporeans and Laotians, for example, are just too far apart when comparing the quality of education, healthcare, and median income. As a diverse and multi-religious country, Indonesia holds traditional values such as gotong royong, inclusive collaboration, or Bhinneka Tunggal Ika, which means unity and diversity. So we believe that diversity is a gift from our Creator, but unity is a toil that we must all take part in. The leaders and businesses of ASEAN must cultivate inclusive, collaborative, and unity and diversity mindset in order to formulate policies that foster a sense of community among member countries. So, After much deliberation and in line with the theme of Indonesia's chairmanship, ASEAN Matters, Epicenter of Growth, the Business Advisory Council finally concluded this year's theme is ASEAN Centrality, Innovating Towards Greater Inclusivity. And we believe that this centrality is the destination. Innovation is a vehicle, and inclusivity is a non-negotiable practice throughout this journey. So not to lose sight of our grand vision, we've broken it down into smaller pieces, of course, that are actionable and measurable. And this is our job at the Business Council. First, we break it down to two priorities: the proliferation and adoption of digital innovation, increase in efficiency and equal opportunity in the region. That means lifting the business community, MSMEs in particular. Second is sustainable development, practices for longevity, security, and health of the region and the planet in general. So in order to achieve those two priorities, we must improve on three pillars that are based on the ASEAN Connectivity Master Plan. They are logistics and infrastructure, which is physically based, regulatory framework, or what we call regulations, which is institutional based, and of course human capital, that's people based. So these three pillars need to go hand in hand to be effective. And for instance, supporting legal standings to develop renewable energy without proper infrastructure will just go in vain, right? So limitless capital without capable human resources will just be a nice goal to read on paper, like a growth without employment. So we propose to focus our target beneficiaries of our program, particularly for our MSMEs. Why MSMEs? Because they are the backbone of not only Indonesia, but also the largest enterprise category in the ASEAN region. It is responsible for employing 85% of the workforce in ASEAN, and it also contributes about 44.8% of the ASEAN's regional GDP. So what makes us different? We ask ourselves. What makes the ASEAN BAC chairmanship from the previous years that countries usually take upon one legacy? This year we decided to embark on actually 7 different legacies. This is 5, but I'll explain to you the 2 additional legacies. They are geared towards promoting digitalization within member countries and also geared towards promoting sustainable and green development. Under the FinTech and e-trade priorities, we have ASEAN QR code. ASEAN QR code to further integrate and accelerate cross-border payments via a common platform. This will do 2 things. This will allow current local currency settlement, and also reduce the cost of transaction, particularly for the MSMEs. Second is P2P lending platform. Leveraging technology as an intermediary, we would like to democratize financial services as a whole in the ASEAN region. Collectively, we can increase the funding pool and make an impact on more underserved, unbanked communities in the region. We've done so in Indonesia, and we think that this can also be shared among other ASEAN countries. Third is Wiki Entrepreneur, as an extension of the B20 legacy. So we've taken some of these legacy projects actually from the B20, like the Wiki Entrepreneur, where we extend one of our flagship programs to the ASEAN community, a knowledge repository and best practices sharing platform dedicated to help MSMEs in the region to scale up. And under the sustainability priorities, we have ASEAN Net Zero Hub, providing assistance to the private sector in decarbonizing and achieving net zero goals, connecting them with enablers that are able to help them restructure their businesses, and providing a platform where best practices are shared and accessed across regions and across industries. And also the Carbon Center of Excellence to accelerate global collaboration on net zero initiatives by fostering collaboration among the businesses, perhaps using a carrot and stick approach to carbon emissions for businesses. We also have, addition to this, what we call a one-shot campaign legacy project, which is a carryover from the B20, which is a campaign to create a regional vaccination program, which is in turn to close the gaps, the health gaps in the region. And the last legacy project we'll be promoting is food security, and this is still being developed within our technical team as we speak. So now you might be wondering who is going to lead this mission of to strengthen ASEAN centrality in the global market, besides the resources we have at Kadin, Indonesia. But first of all, the chairman of ASEAN BAC 2023 is Pak Arshad Rashid, and which is also the chairman of the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce, which has access to these resources and network. And myself, of course, as part of the leadership team, and we also have Pak Hans Lukiman and Pak Raju Munusami as content providers for these projects that we will be embarking. And we are not alone in this also. We are also helped by the ASEAN BAC Secretariat, which is led by Gil Gonzalez, and also with administrative and secretarial matters, we're also being supported by a PMO organization backed by the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. So for the legacy projects, we have appointed project owners. Each one of these comprises of outstanding individuals, experts in their field, industry captains. We are also supported by knowledge partners. And today, let me just introduce Kearney, one of our knowledge partner, which will focus on digital, and also PwC, which will be focusing on the sustainable component, and of course, the Boston Consulting Group. So we are equipped with more than a capable team to cater to this endeavor this year, and to also harness the voices of the region. So the Indonesian chairmanship is still in its early stage. We know that. And the handover itself of ASEAN BAC chairmanship from Cambodia to Indonesia will be held the end of this month in Jakarta, and that handover will then trigger the chairmanship of ASEAN to Indonesia this year. So this meeting hopefully will bring together all ASEAN Business Advisory Council reps from all the 10 countries. Discussions and refinements will be made. Policy recommendations will also be presented to leaders of our member countries at the summit in September. So we'll have an APEC event in September, which is called the ASEAN Business Investment Summit, which will also invite all of you here to this event. And hopefully we can have a robust and dynamic event this September. So in addition to consulting with the councils and business leaders, we have also planned activities all over the globe to promote this concept of ASEAN centrality and attract investments to the ASEAN member countries. So please join us in our endeavor, and we'll promote the top investment projects in ASEAN countries to the world. We will be making roadshows. We will also be making seminars, workshop, talk shows, business matching, network event, of course, investment visits, which is part of the roadshow, and hopefully MOU signing as the apex at the Abyss later this year. If you look at this is almost copying what we've done in B20. So we believe that this kind of endeavor is doable. We've done it last year, and so we would like to also duplicate some of these events this year. So lastly, we'd like to invite the business community to join this endeavor with us, this project with us, but not limited to only the ASEAN communities, but global business community at large here in Davos and elsewhere. By joining ASEAN BAC, you will be able to contribute to the development and progress of the ASEAN region. And within the ASEAN BAC platform, you can contribute to formulating new policies, initiatives, and strategies that will benefit ASEAN as a region. So additionally, participation in debates and discussions related to ASEAN region will help you gain a deeper understanding of the region's issues and challenges. For ASEAN, we are ASEAN. Indeed, we are one people and one race. Thank you.
I would ask Pak Jerry to join us on stage as Vice Minister of Trade to provide the view, to be followed by His Excellency Pak Febrian as well. Thank you.
Oke, thank you. Baik, Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Salam sejahtera untuk kita semua. Shalom. Om Swastiastu, Namo Buddhaya, salam kebajikan. Salam sehat dan semangat buat kita semua. A very good afternoon to you all. Thank you for having me here. It's been a pleasure to be participating in this event. Makasih Pak Lino on behalf of Pak Arsyad Rashid. And also teman-teman dari Kadin. Di sini ada banyak pejabat-pejabat, ada dari Kementerian Perdagangan, saya bersama dengan Pak Dirjen PPI, Pak Jatmiko, hadir bersama saya. Ada juga Pak Dede, terima kasih sudah hadir. Dan tentunya business community. I think one of the good things that we can be discussing about ASEAN, I think was all covered by Padino. So I'm just going to add something, something that's quite relevant to trade, to commerce, and to what we believe as one of the things that we are foreseeing in this future, this coming in 2023. So as you know that we are chairing the ASEAN Chairmanship in 2023, starting this year, last year G20, now ASEAN. I still remember when I was in G20 in Bali, and right after that we came to Bangkok. I accompanied Pak Presiden and also Pak Erlangga, coordinating Ministry for Economy at the time. And I remember, at the time when we were discussing about the outcomes and the results of the G20 in Bali, all of the participants, all of the countries, they appreciate Indonesia for hosting such a beautiful event. But more importantly, ladies and gentlemen, one thing you must know, that all of the results that we accomplished in the G20, not only appreciated by the participants in the APEC summit, but they were also followed by the participants. So I remember the first 2 days when we were in Bangkok, in APEC, but most of them, majority, they could not come into agreement. They were discussing about foreign policy, about dynamics of situation of global factor, about Russia, Ukraine, everything, but they could not come into agreement. And you know what happened? The third day, which was the final day, they finally copy our results from the G20. So all the results, I forgot correctly, if I'm not mistaken, maybe 42 or 42 paragraphs. They were followed and appreciated by participants of APEC. So maybe a round of applause for that. Thank you. Appreciation for Indonesia. Now, this year, 2023, I would like to highlight that Indonesia maybe is the only country in the world that is member of ASEAN, member of G20, and member of APEC. It's only Indonesia. And in ASEAN, as you know, Padino already mentioned, already conveyed, that of course it plays a very strategic roles, blah, 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 blah. And with the population that we have, close to 680 million people, and we are now focusing on what would be the digitalization of our economy and digitalization of the region. And of course, we are now enhancing the digital policy of each nation of members of ASEAN. That's the bottom line. This is the most important thing that we should know. Why? Because digitalization has to come into effect. We cannot avoid that. We must follow that. And such policies must be adaptive. And there is the role of our government, everyone's government, to ensure and to make sure that every policy must be adaptive to digitalization. So this is a couple slides. Maybe I'm not going to be talking all of that, but let me focus on one of the important things that our president, Pak Joko Widodo, maybe the previous slide, has been mentioning a couple times. Strengthening ASEAN role as a regional production hub. Number 2, encouraging the energy transition for sustainable energy security, by definition, clean energy. And 3, invite private sectors in ASEAN to invest. So this is the perfect moment, Balino, business communities, to be participating in ASEAN, because our president also mentioned several times that investment collaboration. As we know that interdependence is growing and is emerging, we cannot avoid that. So we must find a way, a common way, shared values in order to find collaboration to exist in the region. And it is proposed by our president. Next slide. And you know, the main pillars of ASEAN strength, centrality, stability, prosperity. This is all included and all concluded, yeah, and always been mentioned in ASEAN consensus. What we call it back then was ASEAN way. We have ASEAN way. This is the most important thing that probably other regional organizations do not have. But we have, we do. ASEAN does. So, what is ASEAN way? ASEAN way is, the key is non-intervention, cooperation and collaboration, and just like you see in the slide, stability that involve centrality and creating prosperity. So within the business community, with BAC chairmanship and of course Pak Dino and Pak Arsyad Rashid with Kadin and all that, I think what we can do together is we collaborate in terms of not only making sure that policies are adaptive and also adaptable to digitalization, but also making sure that the participation of business communities can come into conclusion, Pak Dino. So we must make sure about that. So what I'm giving to you now is a very concrete way of doing it. Is how to connect, how to collaborate, and let the business communities participate. Next slide. Okay, the symbol, the logo, I think most of you already know. Yeah, I kind of like the symbol, you know. I think it's quite energetic, quite symbolic, but after all, it's red and white. Yeah, merah putih. It's reflecting, yeah, our courage, yeah, and our diversity, our unity, and also it's highlighting, yeah, the role of Indonesia in ASEAN as chairman. And I know that not only Indonesia, but I think some of the ASEAN members, I think they favor red and white, yeah, as their colors. Yeah, yeah, you can see from the flags. Yeah. So this is, I think, one of the most not only simple, but I personally think that this symbol is showing that unity and diversity, they can come along together. Okay, next. Okay, maybe I'm not going to be talking about this. Maybe the next slide. Okay. Last but not least, yeah. I mentioned about digitalization, unity, yeah, ASEAN way, yeah. Don't forget one thing, yeah, that in the future, regionalization is one of the aspects that is considered, yeah, as a very vital factor in governing. Why am I saying governing? Because every government must involve somehow, yeah, the significance of having or becoming a member of part of a regional organization. This is very important. Yeah. As we can see for the past 2 years, yeah, we've been having pandemic for almost 3 years just now. Yeah? And you know what happened? Everyone is facing difficulties. Why? Because there is no such shared value or shared cooperation or collaboration among countries and among regions. So thank God in G20 we finally approved the so-called pandemic fund that they are agreed by all members. It is showing how important regional integration and organization for everyone, for every country. So that's why involving or being part of regional organization is a must. Yeah, and we've been proving that, yeah, since 1967 when ASEAN was founded. Yeah, and we will continue doing it. And I hope, I really hope, I really do, Pak Dino, next time we meet, yeah, probably some concrete things, yeah, created by the business communities in order to make sure just let's be focused on the digitalization policies and digitalization steps of programs or activities. Okay, I think I'm running out of time. I think it's more than 10 minutes. So sorry nih terlalu semangat ya kalau ngomongin ASEAN. But thank you again. Di sini saya mau thank Pak Dirjen, PPI, Pak Jatmiko, Pak Dubes, Pak Watap, Pak Dandi, Pak Dubes Febrian, yeah. And then Pak Dede and everyone who's participating in this event, especially Pak Dino, and then the minister from Timor-Leste. Excellency, and thank you again, and I hope to see you in the near future, and can't wait to be discussing on business matters, yeah, because I'm the Vice Minister of Trade. So one of the roles of Vice Minister of Trade is to talk about trade. So please welcome. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Pak Alex. And since it's supposed to be a keynote speech, I will promise you that it will be painless and very quick. Pak Jerry yang saya hormati, our special guest, Foreign Minister Adelisa Magdo, thank you so much for coming and welcome to the big family of ASEAN. Pak Dede, Kate Basri, Pak Dino, and ladies and gentlemen, and very good afternoon to all of you. I think I'm honored to be able to deliver this keynote speech for this important event. I know the outside temperature is very freezing, but I think with the prominent speaker I have in the list, I have no doubt that we will have a very heated and fruitful discussion in Indonesia Chairmanships, especially on our intention to driving economic growth and stability of the global market. Ladies and gentlemen, if I may say in Indonesia colloquial terms, today's world is not okay-okay saja. If I may quote what the UN Secretary General this morning in the special address is mentioning very precisely that today's global situation is the worst global situation he ever encountered during his lifetime. Of course, he's not living in the First World War or Second World War, but this is the hardest part of this global situation that he has to adapt and he has to challenge, he has to encounter during his tenure as the Secretary General. Indeed, the continuing multidimensional crisis has given us no choice but to keep ourselves on our toes. Policymakers, Majeri, businessmen, like you, all of you, has to be well coordinated and I believe to be prepared to address the never-ending global problem. The question is, ladies and gentlemen, where do position ASEAN in the midst of this cascading crisis? How can ASEAN contribute in navigating these interdependent of global challenges? And on that note, allow me to at least convey three key messages about ASEAN-Indonesia chairmanship in ASEAN 2023. First, for Indonesia, rest assured, ASEAN remains the cornerstone in our national foreign policy. And we have no doubt that ASEAN contribution to the peace and prosperity and security in the region will continue to prevail. On this particular note, we are mindful that successful economic integration and economic growth will continue to underpin the unity and the success of ASEAN. And this really happening despite the ongoing geopolitical and geo-economic challenges. Indeed, in the last 55 years, ASEAN continues to strive in improving the development policies, including in economic sector. And we can see it through modification and harmonization of the rules and economic policy to be market-driven ASEAN. Also implementation of effective trade and foreign investment policy that spur the growth and export and manufacturing industry. And such ASEAN economy continue to grow above average of global economic growth. We have 6.2% in 2011, and we have 5.2% in 2018. Even amidst the unfolding global crisis, ASEAN economic growth still projected to be 5.1 in 2022. And all this number has shown that ASEAN ability in maintaining the resilience and on its macroeconomic performance. And this lead me to the second point, which is recognizing ASEAN relevant in addressing today's complex challenges. Indonesia aims at further strengthening ASEAN as fast a growing region, including ensuring inclusive and sustainable development. And these goals are in line with Indonesia-ASEAN Chairmanship theme for this year, namely ASEAN Matters Epicentrum of Growth. In this regard, just last week, my foreign minister has further laid out a number of priorities for Indonesia Chairmanship of ASEAN 2023. On economic front, ASEAN-Indonesia Chairmanship will enhance the cooperation sector on the strategic importance, including on energy resilience, food security, health architecture, and strengthening financial stability and connectivity. To harness the potential of regional cooperation to the benefit of its people in the region, Indo-Pacific, and also a global community. A flagship event, ASEAN Indo-Pacific Forum, will also be convened sometime this year. The third key message that I would like to underline is the importance of multi-stakeholder collaboration, and indeed enhance support and strengthen collaboration of relevant stakeholders is a prerequisite for ASEAN future successes. And in this regard, ASEAN Business Advisory Council, under Pak Dino's and its relevant entities, has a central role in mobilizing cooperation and initiative in realizing stronger economic integration in Southeast Asia. It is our hope that on this Indonesia Pavilion, on this World Economic Forum, and the ensuing 1 year of ASEAN-Indonesia Chairmanship, ASEAN BAC will continue to play a crucial role. We aim and vision ASEAN BAC will not only provide strategic advices, but also assist relevant ASEAN bodies and private sectors in realizing and enhance cooperation and initiative that will support the ultimate goal of ensuring ASEAN as the epicenter of growth come into fruition. Thus, let us join hands in supporting Indonesia's ASEAN Chairmanship 2023 as a successful feat, not only for the mutual benefit of the people of region, but also for the global community and beyond. Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Your Excellency. Could I call the panelists to come? So, Pak Dino, Pak Hans, Pak Raju, Bu Shirley, our CEO of Indonesia, Pak Chatib, silakan naik aja ke podium. Please take your place. So we'll have a panel discussion, and if we can keep our answers to the point, we can also open up to additional questions that may come from the floor. Yeah. So I'd like to start with Pak Chatib. From your perspective, as a former Minister of Finance, Indonesia is entering this ASEAN chairmanship, and as an economist, what do you see? How do we navigate the boat of Indonesia into ASEAN with challenges and opportunities? What's the perspective? What's your view? What are the key areas to look out for as Indonesia navigates the next year as ASEAN chair?
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Well, thank you very much. First of all, let me, as we've been discussing in Davos in the last 2 days about the global economic outlook, and we are not in a very good situation at this moment because the challenge of this, the pressure of the inflation, the fear of the recession. But interestingly, as has been discussed by ambassadors and also Vice Minister Jerry in his remarks, ASEAN region keep maintain the economic growth forecast for 2023 by about 4.7%. Whereas when we are talking about the global growth, it's only about 1.7%. So you can see ASEAN will become the beacon of the global economy because they contribute to the global growth. And if you're talking about ASEAN, interestingly, we are talking about this 3.3 trillion economy of ASEAN, 50% of the ASEAN economies is basically Indonesian economy. And 50% of the population in ASEAN is basically Indonesian population. So if you are talking about Indonesia, you are basically talking about the greater ASEAN. Because we have the market, we have the rising middle class there, the young population, and don't forget, yeah, with this kind of size, I think the potential is really there. But there are a couple of things that we need to anticipate. The first one is a threat of inflation may have an impact to reduce the purchasing power of people in ASEAN. The good news is, if you look at the inflation in ASEAN, is relatively small compared to inflation in many parts of the world. So the purchasing power is still there. The second one, many countries are facing a problem of the aging population, but if you're talking a country like Indonesia, like the Philippines, the demand is really there. So we are a country with the average working age about 23 years old. So if you're talking about market, the market is there. If you're talking about ability for the regions, last year Indonesian economic growth, we grew by maybe about 5.2, 5.3%, which is maybe one of the fastest in the region. So the market is there. And then if we heard from Ministers Luhut and also Pak Bahlil yesterday, how the Indonesian government tried to sort of like to promote the investment environment, conducive investment environment in Indonesia. So I think with that note, I'm trying to be not too pessimistic about the current situation, because I do believe that the potential is there. But as a former chairman of the investment board, let me warn you on one thing. Investing in Indonesia is very dangerous because it is addictive.
Thank you, Pak Dede, and would like to actually ask the next question to Pak Hans. And so Pak Hans, as the lead for the Asia Business and Investment Summit, obviously this year with Indonesia taking the presidency for the ASEAN Chairmanship, what do you see would be the priorities for the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit, and how would companies participate in that?
Sure. Thank you for the question. I'll try to answer your question with two main points. The priority for us is really to, I think as Pak Khatib put it, extend what Indonesia has become in a global investment economy, which is an attractive center for investment, which has formed its own center of gravity, and extend that blanket across to our Asian brothers and sisters, right? So that is really what will be different during ABIS this year. One, because Indonesia is chairing it. And so the lessons that we have learned during B20 and G20, we will extend into this platform. The beacon of investment that Pak Khatib said we have become, we will extend the knowledge and the partners and our position on the global stage to attract investment not only to Indonesia, but to all ASEAN nations who are in need of partnership with foreign investors. So really Indonesia is going to make the difference. Now, how can people get involved in this? Of course, through attending our annual ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. And what will be different about this summit itself? Again, we want to make sure that we emphasize ASEAN centrality. Thank you for keeping it down over there. So we are going to execute an ASEAN roadshow where we will visit all our fellow ASEAN member states, and we will elicit investment-worthy projects that we are going to then showcase during the ASEAN Business and Investment Summit. We will also ask that the member state extend special incentives for investors who are present there to make these projects extremely attractive for foreign direct investment. And secondly also, I think Indonesia has the capability now, especially after B20 and G20, to attract many more investors across the global stage than we were able to before in ASEAN. Added to that, we have an extraordinary new partnership with a platform called AIM, the Annual Investment Meeting, which is usually located in Dubai. We are now going to have AIM as an adjunct to our ABIS. And what does that mean? We will also leverage the extensive network of AIM and also their extremely close relationships in the GCC region into ASEAN as an investment destination. So these two things combined, Indonesia being the chair and us running ABIS differently, I think will have a huge impact. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Pak Hans. That's really exciting for all the investors to hear and would like to participate. So I would like to then ask Pak Dino as the alternate chair for the Indonesia ASEAN BAC, what can Indonesia ASEAN chairmanship actually learn from B20?
Thank you, Michelle. I think what we've learned from B20, and it's reflected of some of the legacy projects that we carried forward, is two things. Number one, we really believe that providing a platform for all member countries is important, and the B20 experience reflected that. So, just go on what Bahans is saying is really in the past few years we've seen the waning idea of ASEAN centrality. So this year Indonesia wants to take it back, return ASEAN centrality, provide a platform for all ASEAN member countries, and it's going to be reflected on what we're doing, roadshows to all 9 member countries, including this year we were planning to also visit Timor-Leste and also other partner countries around the world, like what we've done in the B20. The second thing I want to note is that one of the experiences that we've learned in B20, and I think our chairman, Pa Arshad, has seen this, is that he always coins the term "no one left behind." This is the biggest takeaway from the B20. And this coin, "no one left behind," is actually reflected on our theme, inclusivity. And so the idea of lifting the MSMEs through legacy projects that we have also been successful. For example, the peer-to-peer lending platform in Indonesia is perhaps one of the most successful endeavors during the COVID pandemic, where MSMEs are now digitized. 75% of MSMEs that were digitized in Indonesia were actually able to weather through the pandemic. So I think this is something that we want to take into ASEAN, how we could reach out to underbanked, unserved communities within ASEAN, which actually represent about 85% of the total business community in ASEAN. So that's what we wanted to showcase this year. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Pak Dino. It's really exciting to look at the inclusivity theme for ASEAN, which is very important, and no one left behind. And I guess that's also applied to all the other ASEAN member countries. So the next question would like to ask Pak Raju. So Pak Raju, you had the ASEAN Business Awards. So it would be very interesting to know what are some of the key objectives and scope of the ASEAN Business Award?
Thank you, Shirley. For those of you not for those of you who are not familiar with what is ASEAN Business Award, it's actually an event. It is held every year, and the presidency country, in this case Indonesia, in 2023, will be hosting it. Now the award typically, each country decide, what categories you want to have. So this year our plan is to put more into in line with the nuance of the legacies that we plan. Right? So for example, we are not going to only focus on award for financial performance, but we will incorporate ESG into this whole thing. So, sort of looking at it from a triple bottom line perspective. We also, of course, the inclusivity part, as also Pak Dino mentioned, that's going to be, for example, women in business leadership. That would be another award that we will have. But as I said, the focus is going to be very much, to bring the businesses in ASEAN to look into the potential within ESG, reducing carbon footprint, how they can try to, what are the initiatives they have to reduce towards net zero. So this, not just an award, but we hope the initiatives, the actions that these winners or to be winners doing can be replicable for others. So we hope that this award will lead to lesson to learn for the others.
Thank you. That sounds really exciting, and also a lot of learnings from each other. Yeah.
Yes, I wanted to go back to Pak Chatib again We saw from the program, the work program presented for the ASEAN BAC, one of the areas of focus is going to be digital, but within digital, particularly fintech, it seems. And within fintech, we're talking about facilitating common QR code across ASEAN and enhancing and facilitating micro lending through peer-to-peer platform, or I would call like borderless micro funding across geographies. Particularly as chairman of Mandiri, it would be nice to hear your point of view on these type of initiatives and what more could be done and how important this will be for ASEAN.
Thank you. There are two things actually. The first one is you mentioned about this cross-border QR. I do believe this is a very important development because with the implementation of the RCEP, the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership, you would expect the volume of trade among the 15 countries, ASEAN plus 5, would increase quite significantly. And this will require a sort of like improvement or also sort of like a connectivity in terms of financing. Yeah, I can imagine with the RCEP as well, there will be maybe people from Indonesia going to Thailand and the other way around. So the cross-border QR will help to enhance this activity. So this is really a very good development. But the second thing, I would like to raise another aspect, which is not talking about the growth, but giving the opportunities. I think the financial inclusion issue is a very important here. Yeah, because in the case of Indonesia, it's about 60% of the population is still unbanked. So if you can provide this access, yeah, especially for women, I'm sitting as a in the Advisory Council for Gender and Development in the World Bank, and I can see the role of this fintech, the P2P lending, is a very important to enhance, to give an opportunity for women to do business, and also the informal sector. Yeah, so I can imagine with a country like Indonesia, we are not talking about to enhance the growth using this the fintech or the P2P, but we also provide the financial inclusion. And I think this is a very important issue, need to be discussed not only in Indonesia, but among the ASEAN countries.
And I would welcome at this point if anyone had any particular questions they wanted to ask our panelists. Yes.
Hi, good afternoon. Thank you very much for the great presentation today. I just have a question regarding global markets and in terms of capital markets as well, because that's a very important topic, especially to support the real economy. And there is this big talk of deglobalization versus regionalization. How do you see this part of the agenda of the chairmanship for this year? Thank you very much.
Can I specifically what? Sorry, what?
In terms of developing the regional capital markets.
Yes. Okay, further
Thank
develop.
you. Pak Khatib, do you mind, even though I know you're an expert in this, I'll take it first from practical. So, last year, Indonesia revealed itself as probably in Asia Pacific, the premier destination for tech investment, right? Especially in the capital markets. I'm very proud that the company that I'm involved in, Blibli, was one of the most successful tech IPOs in 2022. So the proof is in the pudding that Indonesia has the market structure, the policies, the leadership necessary to attract investment in the capital markets. So I think we have experience to share. We have, experienced policymakers. We have experienced bankers who can, extend this framework, extend their experience across the region. And that's really what ASEAN Centrality is about. It's about us and different members with different strengths sharing those capabilities across the bloc and ultimately emerging stronger as one.
I couldn't agree more with you.
I think I would add one of the pillars of work that is presented. It's coded under sustainability, but related to capital markets, related to the ability of imagining a carbon credit trading system for ASEAN. So that particular aspect, which we know is piloted in Indonesia and will be part of the work program. So basically trying to understand what more needs to be done to create a common carbon trading zone. So how will the national markets find ways to integrate on the carbon trading part? Yeah. Please, any other questions? Go ahead. If not, I have one for Padino. Yeah, you're not done yet, yeah? Can you put into like more layman terms, like we fast forward to November this year, everyone's done their homework, everyone's done everything. What is it that you want to see left behind from the Indonesian ASEAN work program? What should we expect to see at the end of November?
That's a tough question, but I think our chairman really said it rightly this morning, that we want to develop a community that's more inclusive, right? Inclusive and providing tools for inclusivity. Pak Khatib recently just added the financial inclusivity. This is what I believe that we could actually leave behind in ASEAN, and actually bring back ASEAN centrality. And we've seen these legacy projects develop, and some of them are very good. But we do believe that we need to be able to hit, at least 8, 9 of the 10 ASEAN countries that make it relevant. So if Indonesia can make a difference this year, it'll be able to promote these legacy projects, the inclusivity, a component of it, in a way that it will be carry on in the years to come. This is our hope, right? Also the mantra of what our chairman have said, no one left behind. Thank you.
Can I add? So one of the legacy that we talk about is the carbon trading mechanism. I think if we can nail that part, that would be something that we left behind. Because as ASEAN, I think the market is really big. And part of the policy work that we'll be doing is, for example, looking at the taxonomy, that each country now seems to have a different taxonomy. If we can have the ASEAN taxonomy for carbon trading, then we can actually create that new market, new capital. And I think if we can do that, that would be something that we leave behind, not just for the next presidency, but for the next generation.
So we have one question here.
Just maybe an intervention. Thanking all of you for taking the floor and for presenting ASEAN perspectives and specificity. And myself, I'm not from your region. I'm from Poland, from Europe. I have been COP24 president, Minister of Climate and Energy, and I have been to Bali to B20 meeting, discussing with Pak Arshad. So the leader that was so frequently referred to during this discussion. And I was saying to him, and maybe it's also an opportunity to share this message with you, that you have a growing responsibility in the world. Because the world is being fragmented. The world is being right now in Europe torn by war. You have China-US rivalry over Pacific Ocean. We have inflation, food insecurity, which is impacting Africa, Middle East. So in this regard, the perspective which has been presented so eloquently about ASEAN centrality, not only to the world, but also in terms of stability of growth, in terms of predictability, in terms of values, no one left behind, financial integration, inclusiveness, etc., etc. I think there is also some kind of a legacy which could be tempted, and I discussed with Pak Arshad, on the level of values. And he delivered a very powerful speech at the end of B20, talking about 5 Ps. So, people, planet, prosperity, and the words were somehow mentioned by many of you. And then partnerships, and in this regard, again, a central role for ASEAN, and peace. And these 5 Ps has become a very powerful message from B20 to G20 community. And I would wish that ASEAN stands for its unique status this year, and Indonesia also takes the ambition, the measure of its ambition, in order to promote not only carbon credits, I mean, all this is extremely important, but also at the level of values, creating a little bit, reshaping a new world order. And I think that if you bring this 5P to the discussion of G7, G20, etc., not only ASEAN, then you are the winners.
Yes, Pa, please.
I'm glad you raised this issue, since I'm no longer in the government and I'm not a diplomat, so I can speak frankly. Yeah, I think Pak Dino mentioned a very important issue about the ASEAN of centrality. Yeah, because back on 2011, when Indonesia was a chair of ASEAN at that time, we proposed the idea of this RCEP, the ASEAN centrality. And the reason behind it is because ASEAN cannot afford to choose between China and the US in this global tension. Yeah, we cannot afford to either we go with China or the US. And we do realize and we do understand that there is no way that any single ASEAN countries can deal with China bilaterally. So that is why the issue of the ASEAN centrality is a very important. The idea is to have the ASEAN as a hub, plus China, plus Japan, plus Korea. That's the basic, that is why the ASEAN centrality is a very important. And I can see now, if we continue to work on this, yeah, because the world badly needs a global cooperation, unfortunately at the situation that we are very fragmented at this moment. So what ASEAN country can propose, as Jerry mentioned in his remarks, is perhaps we can work together on the issue that everyone around the table will sit together. So let me give an example. One of the possibility is to anticipate, to prepare for the next pandemic. Yeah, so the issue of the pandemic fund become very important. The second aspect is climate. So if we can find a sort of like an issue that every country in the region will work together, then by economic cooperation, we can foster the peace and political security in the region.
And I'd just like to add that those 5 Ps, we hope that we can embark on the success of the B20, what we've learned in B20, and incorporate that in ASEAN this year, including those 5 Ps that have been trickled around.
Yeah, Pa Arshad surprised me because I was thinking when he 5 Ps, I was like, oh, I thought it was product promotion, but he changed my views completely, right? So, okay, unless there's other questions, I could bring the discussion to a close. And thank you so much all for participating and providing your comments. Thank you to the panelists, right? And I guess my only additional comment is, as an external observer also of the journey of G20, B20, and how the president and the government navigated that in a very, very complex and challenging situation through a value-based navigation, I think you could have the certainty, the expectation that that will flow through to the ASEAN chairmanship, I think. So thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you very much.
I would just, perhaps we'll take a photo as a panelist.
Thank you.